Hey, I'm excited. I'm sitting down with Kris Vallotton right now. Kris, how are you?
Good. Glad to be here.
I mean, I don't think Kris needs an introduction, but I will state the obvious. Kris is a father in my life. I've been connected to Kris for over 20 years. He's the senior associate leader here at Bethel Church, which really means, I mean, he really runs this place, and he's got a lot to say and do around Bethel Church, the movement that is Bethel. But we're sitting down and we're kind of exploring, focusing on the theme of what is justice. And I feel like no one better to talk to than Kris Vallotton. He's a highly influential leader in the church at large. Bethel's got a bit of a footprint around the globe. And I'm personally very influenced by his theology, his ideas around biblical justice. So just stoked to unpack this with him. And thanks for joining us, Kris.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a subject I'm passionate about in society, especially, right?
Yes. So let's start there. Like, you talk often about revival revival will lead to social statistics in society changing, when specifically negative social statistics. So suicide rates, incarceration rates, etc. And I mean, I'm like, here you go. As a little preface, Second Great Awakening, John Wesley, George Whitefield, these guys are doing their thing in the earth. And what does it give birth to? It gives birth to the end of the transatlantic slave trade, or reform. Revival leads to reformation. Like, you share a lot about this. Do you want to just share your heart? Like, what's in your heart when you think this way? Like, social change, revival leads to, yeah.
Well, there's so many scriptures. So, I was very broken, and I had a nervous breakdown many years ago. And, the scripture that the Lord gave me for my life coming out of that was Isaiah 61, which probably many people would at least be familiar with. It was, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, for the Lord has anointed me to preach the good news to the afflicted, to bind up the broken heart, speak release to captives, freedom to the prisoner, the favorable year of the Lord, the day of vengeance of our God. And it goes like that for 3 verses, talking about the prisoner, the captive, the depressed person, the broken person, the distressed person. And then in verse 4, it says, then they shall return and rebuild the ancient ruins. They shall raise up the former devastations and rebuild ruined cities. So my 2 of my grandkids have this tattooed on their arms. That's how much of a family legacy these 4 verses are, Isaiah 61, 1-4, which it begins with the restoration of people, but it ends with the restoration of cities. And so, all through the scriptures, we see that when individuals get well, they are responsible to have that health, that kingdom expression move towards culture and cities. So, and then even in the word apostle, which Jesus commissioned 12 apostles, the word apostle means sent one, but it means to be sent from a place to another place, to reproduce in the place you're sent to what you're sent from, until the place you're sent to looks like the place you're sent from. In simple terms, it means cultural transformation. So, Jesus commissioned his disciples, learners, to leaders. He could have called them priests. He could have called them prophets. He could have called them patriarchs. All those were titles of Old Testament leaders. But instead, he calls them by the name of the Roman generals who were actually conquering and culturizing cities. Wow. He says, you are my apostles. Then he gives them an apostolic prayer, which is, our Father who's in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So, then Matthew 28, which is the Great Commission, is make disciples of all nations. So here we have over and over, the promise to Abraham, you will be a father to many nations, a father to many nations. And then Romans 4 picks that theme up and says, and so shall your descendants be, fathers to many nations. So, Lance, I think it's just through the whole, I think this theme seeps through all of the scriptures, Old and New Covenant, personally.
It's good. So let's talk about what you're seeing in terms of that playing out, whether it's here at Bethel. You've had great influence and great leadership direction on what our staff is doing here locally, but I also know we're connected to other leaders in other cities. What are you seeing play out in terms of this idea of, I would call it city transformation. Other people may call it societal transformation, cultural transformation. And when we use transformation, we're talking about like bettering our communities. We're not talking about showing up and like, hey, we have all the answers. We're talking about bringing healing, repair, shift, like real solution, right? Talk about what you're seeing on that level of like, okay, it's happening, or it looks like this.
Well, we're in the process of it. So, I don't like when somebody claims a victory in the middle of the game, but because we are in the middle of the game, I love Bill Johnson calls this the great experiment.
Yeah.
But, what we decided 20 years ago was, if we are an apostolic people, which we claim to be at Bethel, then that means that we should be involved in the salvation of souls and the transformation of cities, both. And so, we're pretty good at the salvation of souls. Obviously, we could see many more souls come to Christ, and I think we all want to see that. But we just weren't involved at all in the transformation of cities. As a matter of fact, our front page of our newspaper for 3 years in a row read, Redding, California is one of the worst cities in America to live in. It had the worst. It was on the bottom 10% of the cities our size in social, in not just in social justice, but in our economy, in our divorce rate, in our, just like the 10 statistics they use to measure a healthy city. We were on the bottom 10%. We were in the top 98% of worst on 8 of the 10 categories.
Wow.
And so, wow, this doesn't look like a city that's being influenced by the king or the kingdom. And, at the time, our church was 6,000 people in a city of 90,000. So it's like, wow, if a city of 90,000 people cannot be influenced by a church of 6,000 people, what kind of hope is there for any city to change, So, Lance, you're involved in it. So, we just said, I think we need to get proactive in the rebuilding of our city. And we started being, very proactive everywhere from, the way that our generosity towards our city, towards, and then also starting a secular venue called Advance Ready to advance the betterment of our city. And, we've done everything from, raise $1.2 million to pay for 4 police officers to, take over the Civic Auditorium because it was closing and there was be no entertainment in our city. I mean, and then we have we have 2,000 students that go into our city every week and work in our city. We bought $1 million worth of equipment. All of it's about, but I love what you just said, Lance, because it is a key. Romans 13 says that civil leaders are actually servants of God. They actually says ministers of God. So, what we learned is that we can't come in and tell our city, hey, here's some things you should be doing. So we meet with our city officials, our police, our sheriff, our city council members, our city manager, our mayor, and we ask questions. We go in there and we're like, where do you need help? How can we help? And when we first started doing that, it was really like, oh gosh, these crazy Christians. Okay, you guys can clean the parks. Great, we'll do that. And when we just took it so seriously, like we'll clean parks like Solomon waiters set tables. Like we will do this. We will do this with passion and compassion and excellence.
Good.
And that's just where we started, and little by little, our city has dramatically improved, although we have a long ways to go. We've seen significant improvement in all those social statistics, and our city's slowly becoming a beautiful city.
Yeah. So there's that's a key foundational nugget right there. Hey, how do you connect with your city in a way where you can actually verify, is there something I can do to help, versus showing up with all the answers? So there you go. Anything else you would add? Because part of my hope with these conversations is leaders in different spheres, cities, church leaders specifically, that may, they're getting the unction like, hey, we want to make a difference, but maybe there is a real divide because there is a divide between church and state, isn't there? And so sometimes we don't know how to engage. So there's a key. You're like, hey, just can you say, what can I do to help? Anything else you would add that feels like, oh, this helps in terms of getting closer, starting to be a source of strength? Yeah.
I think, like if we see ourselves as the hero instead of as the servant, we've already messed it up, because when we walk into city council, or we walk into the mayor's office, or we're there to serve. We're there to make them look like a genius. So we're there to say, how do we make our city manager look like a genius? And what is it our city manager has in his heart or her heart? And how can we be the hands and feet, or maybe help fund it, or whatever, So that's what we're doing. We're not doing it for them. We're doing it with them.
Oh, there you go.
And I think that's a key, Lance, because churches are so critical of their local governments. Wow. And local governments are so gun shy. And you get into their office and you're like, and my road's got potholes, or you need to get behind the vaccine, or you need to get behind the ban on the vaccine. And it's like, yeah, we're not doing that. We're just like, hey, what do you need help with, and how can we help? That's what we're doing. That's
beautiful. And how do you, as a leader you're in a high position of leadership here in our environment, foster the kind of culture where leaders are getting out and engaging? Because I think that is, I'm not saying we've won, and I'm not saying we're the example.
No.
But something we're doing well as Bethel is we are getting out and we are engaging. We're not kind of hiding in our churches.
Yeah.
And anything that you'd speak to there that may help foster the sense of going in a way that works?
Well, you're doing it too. You got to care, and that there's not a lot of people that actually want to work,
okay.
like get in the trenches.
Okay.
Like you're doing it with the broken, right? Your primary ministry is, or at least one of your primary ministries is to, the prostitute and the prostituted, and and that whole, but you're getting your hands dirty, like you're actually in the trenches. You're not just, hey, I got a plan, this is what you ought to do. Like you're actually in the trenches trying to understand what is the ecosystem here and how do we unplug it, right? So you're not just rescuing sex traffickers, but you're actually asking the hard questions, like why are people, first of all, why are people trafficked?
Yeah.
And what's creating the hunger for it? What's creating the opportunity to on and on? And in other areas, I'm doing the same, where teams are doing the same. We're asking ourselves, what is the ecosystem? Like, what's the root? Because you can pull the leaves off of the weeds all day long, but if you don't grab the root out,
wow,
it's really a long-term, you're not actually accomplishing anything.
Yeah.
So, and I think that visiting those hard questions with city leaders. Like I remember we Danny Silk and I put together this meeting, and we invited about 50 city leaders to this meeting to have a brainstorming session around what are their key issues that are causing our city to be in disarray. And we had the sheriff there, we had the police chief there, we had the mayor there, we had a city manager there, we had superintendent of schools there, two or three of them. We had some teachers there. We basically had most every round. Oh, we had the probation officer there. We had a court justice there, attorney general. So we had, like, these were the leaders of our city in all of these areas.
Yeah.
And we had a whiteboard, and we asked the question, like, let's go around the room and you tell us in your area, what is the one, if you just had to choose one, what is the one largest, biggest, greatest challenge you face on a daily basis, that if you could fix it, you would fix a big, huge problem that you face every day.
Yeah.
The very first person, I think, was the sheriff. He said, fatherlessness.
Wow.
When we left that night, Lance, 3 hours later, there was one word on the board: fatherlessness.
Wow.
One.
Yeah.
There wasn't a single person, leader, who said there was even a close second. Because I started saying, guys, let's do, like, is there a number two? No number two, Lance.
Wow. So clear.
Crazy, right?
So clear.
You wouldn't think the police chief would say, oh, my number one problem is fatherlessness. Right? You wouldn't think, well, that's the police chief is thinking like that.
Yeah.
But the police chief is asking himself the hard question, like, what's really wrong?
Yeah.
What's at the root of crime? And his answer is fatherlessness.
Yeah. And you've been carrying that word for years. I mean, you live that word, but recently you've been talking about the Malachi Mandate.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, okay, what action, what sort of activities can we be wrapped up in that start to, they're preventative. They go upstream and they're solution oriented. They're not just, triage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts there? I mean, I have thoughts, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like when you say addressing fatherlessness or starting to heal that wound, anything that you've been bumping into, and it's okay if we're just brainstorming together on this little recording. That's fine.
Well, I have a lot, obviously I just finished a book on fatherlessness. So,
there you go.
I did some statistical studies and, so I have a lot of my opinions have grown stronger in the last 6 months because, we've been actually doing statistical studies and social studies to ask ourselves the same question you and I are discussing, like, okay, why? Like, what's at the root of it,
Wow.
And so you have the 60s, you have the sexual revolution. And along with the sexual revolution in the 20s, but, we introduced evolution to our school system, but it didn't really take root till the 60s. Like no one actually used the curriculum. No one actually believed it. Schools had it, but they didn't really use it. But the 60s, when we were living like hell, we needed to not answer to heaven. And, evolution gave us a great, it gave us a reason to not fear God, right?
Like a perfect framework, right?
Totally. And then you started evolving, pretty soon you got the sexual revolution, which basically said, screw anybody you want, like, if you can't be with the one you want, if you can't be with the one you love, just be with the one you want, be with the one you are. And, this whole idea of like, just have sex with anyone, make no commitments, hookup culture, hangout culture, live, cohabiting culture just grew exponentially.
Wow.
And, and then 1973, we had to pass, abortion in America, Roe versus Wade. So now we had a problem because we're getting all these single girls pregnant, and now we have to have a solution for these babies. So we, and it just goes on and on. Then we had the LGBTQ movement comes out of the sexual revolution. Hey, I don't just have to, and I don't know if I want to just have sex with women. Maybe women want to have sex with women, men want men. And, and it just goes on and on. And then, hey, we want to have all the privileges of, we want to have all the privileges of a normal family. We want to be able to adopt children and, get the gay community. So they're like, we have to normalize having two mamas or two daddies. So we have to make men and women interchangeable. Mm-hmm. So now we have, out of that comes toxic masculinity, because men acting like men is not men acting like, like they're a woman or like they're, so now we have to shame the aggressive nature of men. Mm. And pretty soon, now you end up with, the truth is 51% of all children in America now, as of 2017, 51% of all children in America are born out of wedlock. They have no daddies. And this is the evolution of a culture that, you know, that has no God, that has no conscience, that has no morals, that has no such thing as nobility. And we're like, this is freedom without a conscience.
Okay.
And, you know, and then what happens when you don't have a daddy? Well, 78% of all incarcerated inmates are men. I mean, well, 95% of all incarcerated inmates are men. 78% of them are fatherless men. You know, it just goes on and on. The statistics are stunning, like stunningly bad. What happens when you take a dad out of a home? Men get increasingly violent. That's what happens. So, you know, this is the quote revolution.
Yeah.
This is the progressive revolution, as if it's positive, but you know, this isn't progressive. This is digressive. You know. Yeah,
it's disintegration, right?
The disintegration. It's a deconstruction of the family, yep. And it's the intentional destruction of culture.
Yeah. And so investing in that space. So something that we've initiated is like, we want to bolster and strengthen activity towards foster families. So those that are stepping up and taking care of kids that are, you know, they're experiencing neglect or just chaos, or fathers are completely gone. So we, like, as the church, hey, can we wrap around families? Another big initiative would be like showing up for kid mentoring. Anything that you've been like bumping into maybe in your travels or even in your own leadership here in our city that you're seeing, well, that looks like part of the solution landscape. Because again, solution can be varied, huh? It's not just one step.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. Like, there's not one solution, you know. Yeah. And I love what you just said, because the solution is fatherless kids need dads. And, you know, whether it's foster, what you just said is beautiful, because we got to get kids out of orphanages, and we got to move them from bastards to sons, and from sons to fathers. Wow. And I would say the same about the girls, right? We need to move them out of the, you know, orphan spirit into womanhood and into motherhood.
Yeah.
We have to restore the maternal instinct, so that we're not having to make laws for women to not kill their babies.
Yeah.
Because we don't want women to have babies. We want moms to have babies. And we believe that every woman is a mom inherently. But yes, you're right. Really great foster homes where you have healthy, noble people that are saying, I'll be your father, I'll be your mother, come into our family and have a family. We adopted a son when he was 15, and we're very excited for that. He's now 46 actually. So, you know, we're involved in that same process. Like, let's be fathers. Let's be a family to people who don't have them. I totally agree, Lance. I love what you're doing on that level.
I love it. Let's back up a couple steps. Think about leaders in your sphere, the church. What would you tell them to help them engage? You know, we make negative statements like get out of the four walls, and I don't think that way. I'm just thinking like, no, we all have a heart in our chest. We all care. Sometimes people don't know how to take steps, you know?
Yeah.
What would you speak back to, whether they're leading an entire church or maybe they're in a management level of leadership in a church? Anything you would drop in terms of wisdom to help them get going?
Well, I think you said it. Like, you have to, I think that you're unqualified until you're qualified, and you don't get qualified by sitting on the bench and watching the parade go by. Like, and it is a catch-22, because you see the problem. And I think that most people on this call, it's not hard to see the problem. I mean, basically, if you look out the window, you're going to see the problem. And then the challenge becomes like, I don't feel equipped to do anything. Like, what did I do about it? And the answer to that is as varied as who you are and the gifts you have. And you know, so one of our team, her name's Jackie Durant, was telling a story of a young man that she brought into the jail system who's a rapper and a dancer. What kind of dance am I trying to say?
Yeah, he's a break dancer.
He's a break dancer.
Yeah.
And so, she's had varied impact on the jail system over many years. She loves them. Married to an ex-con, and has who's a great man now, and she just has a great passion for people that are incarcerated. Well, she takes this rapper, break dancer in, and of course you gotta imagine that the jailer's not super excited about that. And the guy goes in there and he does some rapping and breakdancing for the prisoners. And the way I understand, at least, all of a sudden, like immediately his gift endears him to these prisoners. And not only is this guy a rapper and a breakdancer, but he's also got this amazing testimony. So he starts sharing his testimony. He gets their attention with his breakdancing and his rapping. And then he starts sharing his testimony. I think I have this right, Lance. Starts sharing his testimony. And now now the jailer's like, hey, we'd like to have more sessions with you guys. And we'd even help fund your ministry. And so, and there he is. Now, I'm sure that guy's like, I'm a rapper and a break dancer. What does that have to do with me going to jail and talking to people,
Yeah.
The gift made room for him and opened a door. And they're just, this just started happening in the last few months. And suddenly Jackie has the most successful jail ministry she's ever had, because she convinced this guy to come with her and do what he does. And so, I think a lot of pastors and leaders are like, I don't know what I'd do. I don't know what I'd do if I went to the jail, or I was out talking to a prostitute, or, if I went to an orphanage and hung out with the children. I don't know what I'd do. I don't know what the solutions are. And I would suggest that it's really hard to find a solution to a problem you've never looked into. You've never taken the time to actually engage the problem. I've solved very few problems that I haven't thought about. Well, once in a while, you get the flaming pie idea about something you don't care about, but 99% of the time, the stuff you find solutions to are things you've engaged.
Yeah. Good.
So I think just finding a way to engage, in your gift. If you're the rapper, you rap. If you're the preacher, you preach. If you're the artist, you paint. If you're the singer, you sing. It's not brain surgery. You just bring your gift to the party.
Yeah, I love that. And the learning that's going to ensue. I think back to what we were talking about earlier. Hey, we're not the savior. So when we show up, we're probably going to learn some stuff. And be ready to stay low and stay humble. And it's all about, like you said earlier, well, we're just here to serve.
Exactly.
Good. It's beautiful stuff. I think we need to land this plane from my schedule. I think you're on to your next meeting.
I am. Yes.
I really appreciate you taking time with us, Kris. I think you have so much to share with the church at large in this space. There's so much hope in my heart for more transformation happening, for more of the church being invested in culture. And thanks for speaking this for us. And I think with that, we'll just say goodbye. Thanks for your time. I don't know if you have anything parting to say.
I just want to pray, Lord, I pray that as what Lance and I were sharing it would really tug on the hearts of the people who watch this, and they would engage in culture, and that they would find great joy in finding purpose for their life, in helping other people prosper and find the King in the kingdom. And we bless every single person who would attend this call.
That's good.
Yes.
Thank you, Kris. So appreciate your time.
Bless you.
And with that, we'll say goodbye.
Bye now.